Good morning and welcome back, sailors. Today we ported at the Royal Naval Dockyard in Kings Wharf, Hamilton, Bermuda. The last time we were here was in January 2020, just before the pandemic gripped the world. There really isn't that much to do on the island. There is a few shops and a glass ornament factory. You do have the Governor's House, which was off limits this time because it was being refurbished. Now, you wouldn't normally have to pay money to get off at any port, as port taxes are normally included in your cruise fare, but for some strange reason they wanted us to pay $40 just to enter their waters, and everyone had to pay it even if you were not getting off the ship. It really wasn't well communicated, and had we not been part of a Facebook group about the crossing, then we wouldn't have known anything about it. The first news out from Celebrity was about 7 days prior to sailing. The Bermuda government's website was shocking to say the least. Then to find out that if you didn't have this, you wouldn't have been able to travel on the cruise. I mean, really? Celebrity, really? There was a lot of tweets asking them to move this port from the itinerary. So I certainly won't be travelling back to Bermuda anytime soon, because this was just a way for them to kickstart their economy. I know they haven't had much tourism in the last couple of years, but that's like most other places around the world. With 2 cruise ships in port that day and around about 1,300 passengers each, then you're talking around about $104,000 for nothing. Now, there's supposed to be a COVID test administered to get back on board. That didn't happen, and that's how it shows up in your credit card statement. So if you didn't pay, you didn't travel, because you had to show proof of payment. It was also such a faff, because there were some people like me that didn't get their authorization back until they were in the queue ready to board at the port. But enough of that, let's move on. We decided to have breakfast this morning in the main dining room, which was lovely. Ian had apple cider oatmeal, Paul had oatmeal, Chris and I had eggs Benedict, and I also had a bowl of frosted flakes. After breakfast, I decided to go back to the room and get stuff ready for the day. I lay back down in the bed, which was a mistake because I fell asleep for a couple of hours. I awoke, texted Paul to find out he was sitting in the library. I then went down to see Ian and Chris in the cafe on 5, as they'd not long got back on board because they decided to get off the ship for a little while. They advised that everything looked like it did back in January 2020. Now, Chris and I had been chatting about seeing the film The 355 later that afternoon. I asked if he was still up for it, he said yes, and Ian came along too, and off we trotted to Celebrity Centre on deck 4 forward to watch the movie. Now, amongst all the old folks on this trip, I am probably one of the youngest on the ship, and was probably the most well behaved in the cinema. The oldies were talking when the film started, running commentary on what was happening, one old man complaining that the film had too many female character leads. It is based on a true American spy story, and the main lead is a female American spy. Obviously he doesn't know his own country's history. Now, where was WWE's Clark Gable to shout "Shush, please!" at them when we needed him? After the film, we went up to the Ocean View Cafe to grab a bite to eat. The film was 2 hours long and started when we probably would have been grabbing lunch. Now that explains why the old folks were anxious. They were missing a meal. Ian had fish and chips, I had shepherd's pie, and Chris had steak and ale pie. We then afterwards headed out to the pool deck to see where Paul was. He was sitting with Ian and Tony by the pool, so we joined them for a little bit, and then it was time to have a soak in the hot tub. As the sun was slowly getting lower in the sky, it was time to go back to the room and get ready for dinner. Chris and I met at the World Bar as we were going to see the early showing of the theatre production Life. Life was an okay production. I really hate that they do that 2 male, 2 female singers in all cruise productions, and it's just so formulaic it gets really boring. I'd like to see them mix it up a bit. In this one though, we had 3 males and 3 female singers. There were acrobats, and they were probably the best bit of the show. The songs that were used will trip international copyright laws, so I can play the show but just with a backing track. The show finished. We then met up with Paul and Ian because they were in the World Bar. We had a drink and then it was time to go for dinner. Dinner again was in the main dining room at the Grand Cuvée. If you want to see the menu, just press the pause button. After dinner, we met Ian and Tony in the Martini Bar, because it's just by the entrance of the dining room. We decided that we would take our drinks up to the Sky Lounge Bar. It was quiet when we got to the Sky Lounge Bar, but then became more busy because the party event that should have happened outside by the pool was cancelled due to the wind and was moved inside to the Sky Lounge instead. The Soul Group did a couple of numbers, and then it was this side versus that side karaoke. Then Bristol Fashion, the band, played a few numbers. It was a nice pleasant evening, which then turned into disco afterwards, but the music, well, that was a choice, and not played to the audience in the room. It was then that time of the evening to go to the Ocean View Cafe to get a cup of tea or a hot chocolate. I decided on some cheese and crackers and a cup of tea. I had some in the Ocean View Cafe and also took a cup of tea down to the room with me. We played a few games on our iPad and then it was time to turn out the lights. So with that, good night sailors, and we will see you again real soon.